Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer Dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Hi. Lovely to see you all. So I don't know how this is going to unfold. I'm kind of glad that you're here with me, and we'll see what happens. I'm really grateful to be here. You may notice that I have a weepy eye, so I'm not actually crying. My left eye cries, my right eye doesn't at the moment, so it's not because I'm upset. And I was thinking about Frank Ostazeski and the interview that he gives when he's talking about his vulnerability. And the interviewer asks him, "How are you doing?" And he says, "I don't know." And I think that's kind of where I'm sitting at the moment. A lot of things have been moving through me this week, as they do. It's been a week of many lessons, I think. And I've got a couple of things to share with you, and we'll see how they sit for you and how they sit for me, and I'll just offer them and see what happens. So I've been reading a book recently which is called The Old Ways by somebody called Robert Macfarlane, who some of you may have heard of. And it's a book about his walks, really, through various different pathways that are the old pilgrimage paths and various ancient pathways that are through the British Isles. And it's quite a curious book to read, and it's not particularly easy. He's what I would call a wordsmith, so I find that I have to keep looking up words because I don't know what they are, and he likes using them clearly. But I was reading this part where he's talking about suddenly he's moved from the land to the water, and so I was going to read you just this little bit because it resonated for me. It made me think about practice and about various things. So he says in Old English, and I don't know how to pronounce this next word, the word whale-weg, the whale's way, and in English, the ocean roads, the sea lanes. We think of paths existing only on land, but the sea has its paths too. The water refuses to take and hold marks. Sea roads are dissolving paths whose passage leaves no trace beyond a wake, brief turbulence astern. They survive as convention, tradition, as a sequence of coordinates, as a series of waymarks, as dotted lines on charts, as stories and as songs. And I was thinking about our practice and our rituals and our forms and our verses. And the dissolving paths that leave no trace except a wake. And they live through us. And he talks about the characteristics of these particular sea lanes, is that actually they bring things together. They bring people together, they bring places together. And they're determined completely by the landscape and the seascape, and they form a network. And if we think about the network that they form, it completely begins to shift our perspective of ideas like countries and boundaries, because they're not just on the land, they're on the sea, and they move beyond our perception. And I think that that's really been the many lessons this week have been about moving beyond your limited perception. And it began, my week began with, as I probably shared on Tuesday, with offering my little 4-year-old granddaughter a little stone, like a donut stone with a hole in. And when she asked me what it was for, I said, it's to see the world differently. And when you looked through the stone, you saw the world completely differently. And there have been a whole range of things that have kept arising this week that have been inviting me to, I'm trying to think how to put it really, to move closer to the invisible, we'll put it that way. And I've been asking myself the question, how do we make the invisible visible in our practice? Is that what we're doing a lot of the time? That's a curious question, isn't it? I mean, most things that we think we see are not really the way that we see them. We have a completely distorted and our own unique view. And it's very limited. And I recognize more and more how limited my view of the world is. And I was thinking about, the things that you remember, if you think about, is there a trace? Do I leave a trace? Is there a tracing of my life? And Josh talked about this in inquiry about how do we see things and how do we see our lives. And if I think about what's invisible, there are moments that I remember that feel like they're really close to something magical, close to something infinite, close to something, well, it's hard to describe, isn't it? But if I think about how my week went, I was looking through this little stone with my granddaughter as a memory. And it's a memory of something that was completely different from other things in the day. And then I came across a video which I'm hoping we're going to watch in a moment if I can if I can manage the technology. I've always loved the work of two sculptors. One in particular is called Andy Goldsworthy, and some of you may well have heard of him. And he'd call himself an earth artist, I think, and he creates art in the landscape, from the landscape really, and it's very much about the beauty of the world and the ephemeral nature of life, and how things are just glimpses of something amazing. And so I'm going to see if I can share this video, and it's only 4 minutes long, and it's actually meant for primary school children. So I think we might be okay with it. The sound on it is not particularly brilliant, but I think you will get the sense of it.
I'm a sculptor. I work directly with the land, working with materials I find in the landscape, whether it be Japan, the North Pole, but it's the landscape around my home that's the most important to me, and it's that landscape to which I keep returning and is the place that I can learn most about nature and my relationship with it. The slate is so much about layering, the way it is formed. You know, when you get a block of slate and slice it up, there's something so extraordinary as seeing this book of stone being revealed, and as you lift one piece off another, how you're looking back in time, really. With the slate being dry, it has this wonderful capacity to be drawn on, slate against slate, and I like that between these two things you can produce that, you know, that for me is fascinating, and that the line is not just drawn on the slate, it's drawn out of the slate. So it's not as if I've come here with a white crayon and made these lines. Today there's obviously a little bit of tension with the weather, because this is a dry work. It's a work made for dry slate as it is now, but the weather is showery. At first I didn't know whether I was just going to do a line. I decided to fill it in somewhat, I think to balance it out with the solidity of the slate, and hopefully something will emerge that where the drawing will appear to have more presence than the slate itself, so it sort of floats over the slate. In all the time that I've worked here, I've never yet managed to make a rain shadow, which is what I do when it rains. So I lay down and the rain wets all around me, and then I get up leaving a dry shadow where I've laid. So if it does rain, I will do one of those, probably just here, which is quite nice, laying alongside the work. So what is causing the disappearance of one work, creating the other. Well, that is rain. Picking the moment when to get up is always tricky too. I think that's a good time now. So getting up off the slate's awkward. I don't want to reveal any of it. Yeah, my hand is just out a little bit. But that's always the difficulty of making it on a very rough surface. I like the roughness, but it loses the detail. Beginning to dry now around the stones. It is important to take a chance on a work to see if it will succeed. There's been so many things that I've told myself that will not, are impossible, but tried anyway and succeeded. I returned to the slate quarry 2 days after making the piece there, and even though it had rained heavily, the outline of the work was still there. So I redrew the work, which was wonderful to be able to go back and revive a work that had been made previously. I liked that idea a lot.
That really touched me. I feel so close to the mystery of life, and just that amazing openness and curiosity to see what will happen. You know, most of us in the rain, when it rains, we'd rush for shelter, but I'll lie down and see if I can make a rain shadow. And I was thinking, you know, is that what life is? It's the rain shadow. We're here for just a little while, and the rain is life as it is, coming all of the time. And the trace is maybe there for a short space of time, only for a little time. We may be able to see the trace of this life. And your life, and every living being. But there's something really beautiful and magical about the impermanence of it as well. The sense that something else comes out of it. You know, that actually the drawing he was making would be washed away while he was making another shadow. And I was thinking about, what is this practice? What are we doing? I've been particularly thinking about what are we doing, because this week I begun to sit with another little group, and I was thinking, what is it? What is this, Lynne? What are you offering? And these questions about the invisible and how the invisible, we're constantly finding ways in which to express our lives, even though they're not traceable. There are memories and there may be objects and things, but the actual pathway, the sea lane, is not traceable. It's just there for the moment, but it's happening. And if we don't, I guess I've been asking myself again, if I don't live in this moment, then actually there's just an untraceable past and there's an unknowable future. And I go to a Tai Chi class, I'm sure I've mentioned this before, and there's a beautiful posture that we have, which is called Wu Ji, and it's the pose of infinite possibilities. And I was caught thinking, well, why is there just one pose that is the pose of infinite possibilities? This pose is the pose of infinite possibilities. Your pose where you're sitting now is the pose and posture of infinite possibilities. Every moment is the moment of infinite possibilities. And how do you share that with people who have come for the first time to a Zen practice? And I could talk about things, and I did talk about a few things. People asked me some questions last night. But actually, it's not in any of that, is it? It's not in the head stuff, and it's not in the questions. It's perhaps in the way that maybe I lit the candle, or in the way that we offer. I was thinking about the warm hand to warm hand, and for the warm hand to meet another warm hand, then somehow something's got to happen. We've got to come together. And it feels more like this. I remember Flint talking about this posture and saying, this gesture, what does it mean? Is it an offering or is it a receiving? Or is it just two hands and nothing? But the gesture has to be made and has to come from somewhere. And I think it has to come from our hearts in some way. As we read yesterday morning, we read a little bit from Alan Sanuki's book, Turning Words, and he was talking about Bernie Glassman, who was, or was, the founder of the Zen Peace Organization, and he had 3 tenets of how we should meet others. And what he said was, the first one was not knowing. Let go of all your opinions and all your ideas and all your thoughts about the universe. Just let them dissolve like the pathways. Let go of those. And the second one is to bear witness. And we're doing that all the time, aren't we? Bearing witness to each other, meeting each other, listening to each other. And then the third one is loving action. And I think the loving action is the just holding up the hands, moving from your heart. So in taking a step forward, in whatever way it is, in taking a step forward in meeting a new group of people, there were a couple of things that sort of came. You know, there was a poem, and the poem is the one about staying close. I'll see if I can find it, and you may remember it, but it feels like a really clear way of recognizing that actually this practice has to come from this person, through this person. And it's by David White, and it's called Start Close In. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way of starting the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To find another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes a private ear listening to another. Start right now. Take a small step. You can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in. The step you don't want to take. Start close in. With this body, this heart, this mind, this person, this life. I'm just going to finish with a death poem. I have this thing about the death poems. I think they're really very beautiful. Most of them are like an essence of something. Maybe the rain shadow. This is the death poem by Kozan Michikiya. I'm saying that correctly, I don't know. Empty-handed I entered the world, barefoot I leave it. My coming, my going, 2 single happenings that got entangled. So I'm wondering what the traces are in your life and the closeness to the mystery. Or the just being the mystery. And how the invisible is made visible in some way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer Dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.